Get a roll call, please, Ms. Johnson?
Trustee Oshipenti?
Here.
Trustee Salahudin?
Here.
Trustee Inger?
Present.
Vice President Lee?
Here.
President Tejada?
Here?
Student Trustee Glazano?
Here.
Student Trustee Hurd?
Here.
Student Trustee Abuzarea?
Here.
And Student Trustee Green.
Here.
Do we have any changes to the agenda?
We do. There is an item in the information correspondence section, 11B1, and we would just like to pull that and put it into the discussion session so that Mr. Warden can talk with you about it.
Into discussion.
Mhm.
Great, so,
Also have a change to the agenda.
okay,
To remove item 11B2 from the agenda.
you'd like to pull it?
Yeah, it's an inappropriate item. It should not be in the agenda.
Sorry, see, you're moving to
Motion to remove item 11B2 from our agenda.
completely.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's, if that's the motion to remove, it's informational, but if you want to, the motion is to remove item B2 in its entirety and like from
Yes.
the website and, or what are you asking? Just to remove it completely?
Yeah, that's the motion on the floor.
Okay,
Yeah.
so do we have a second on that? Okay, your motion's failed, no second. So now we're going to, I'm going to entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the change that Ms. Presta made.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No.
So let's do a roll call vote on that then.
Trustee Oshipenti?
No.
Trustee Salahudin?
Yes.
Trustee Inger?
Yes.
Vice President Lee?
Yes.
President Tejada?
Aye.
Roll call the student trustees as well. They are
Yes,
off.
let's do that.
Student Trustee Glazano? Student Trustee Hurd?
Yes.
Student Trustee Abuzarea?
Yes.
Student Trustee Green.
Yes.
Thank you for reminding us of that, Trustee Salahuddin. Very
We got
important.
to talk about it yesterday, so.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. Okay, so now on to the approval of the minutes.
Move to approve?
We have a amendment to the minutes.
Okay, which minutes?
The minutes for October 19th.
19, okay.
Yes.
So let's pull that up. Like to amend?
Yeah.
What are you suggesting?
So, one, the language, I believe, is a little biased in terms of describing what I spoke to regarding.
Please specify the paragraph.
Yeah, I'm just going to go into it now. Is in item 14C, 1. C1.
Okay,
On page, here it is, page 8 on it. So it says Trustee Ochipinti opined that the committee was rushed and lacked committee input. I think opined is a strange word to use. I would say asserted that the committee was rushed and lacked committee input. I actually had more than simply just concerns regarding future enrollment projections. I asked several questions, which are not stated here. I would simply add this, that Trustee Ochipinti also asked why and how Ceremony Del Rey could be considered as a surplus, noting that the Ceremony Del Rey site, in fact, is currently is and always has served as educational use. And I did assert that.
so we're changing opine to asserted, and you would like to add that additional language?
Yes.
I make a motion to accept it with those changes.
Actually, one more thing.
Oh, sorry.
That's right. During the course of the discussion, I know under Trustee Salahuddin's comments, or the comments that summarize what she was discussing here, and everybody else, it does include one of the speakers, the presenters, Jose Villalobos, addressed and disagreed with my opinion. I did not hear any final judgment or statement from the presenters. They simply presented information, and we voted on it. So I'd like to remove Jose Villalobos' name from that because it's not factually grounded. Certainly there was a disagreement, but I don't see that that was part of it.
So, do you know the line he wants to remove?
Yeah, it's the paragraph right beneath Trustee Ochipendi, the very subsequent paragraph. Trustee Salahuddin, Associate Superintendent Tina Van
So you're
Ramport.
saying that Mr. Villalobos did not disagree with your opinion?
They had a finding of the report, but they weren't disagreeing or agreeing with anybody on the board. What they simply did was
Okay,
address
so-
part of my question.
Okay, go ahead.
Can we just change it to that instead of saying disagreed with trustee Ochipendi, like remove the, just said.
Addressed.
Just addressed the, agreement in the projection information provided.
Or how about just address trustee Ochipendi's concerns?
I think it would be better to just say that we were all in agreement about the future enrollment projections that were provided to the district.
Okay, so okay, so we'll go trustee Salahuddin, Superintendent Tina Van Raphorst, Associate Sue, Jose Villalobos, and President Tejada.
We all spoke to the factualness of, or whatever the word, just spoke to the validity of the enrollment projections that had been
Okay.
provided to the district.
Okay, that's good. Are you good with that, Mr. Ochipendi?
Characterizing the
We just
conversation.
addressed it?
Yes, but I would still remove one of the presenters' names. Both of them spoke to it, but they were speaking based on the data they were given, which I disputed because we still
Okay,
have
so
students attending
you
here.
still want to remove Mr. Villalobos' name from there?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
but Salahuddin, Tejada, and Van Raphorst leave?
Yeah, but he's supposed, like, the presenters were designated by law. They're a neutral party. It's supposed to be an advisory committee to
But
the
he
board.
was here, so
Right.
how do people, okay, so we've got a motion. Mr. Ochipendi, let's see. So we have a motion to change the verbiage per what Ms. Salahuddin said. Do we have a motion?
So I would, I think, maybe, do we want to separate the two, or,
I know.
because this is the second part.
That's the second part. So I think let's do a motion on the first change that Mr. Ochipendi requested about the paragraph above.
Sorry.
Yes?
Would you like Chelsea to read what she's now
Yes,
got,
that
so you
would
know
be
what
great.
you're...
Thank you.
You want to read the first change?
I have it just written as a note.
Sorry.
That's okay. So the first one is that trustee Ochipendi prefers that instead of it being stating rushed, saying asserted. So that's one of the first changes. And that you also asked
Instead of
several
saying
questions.
opined.
Yes.
Asserted.
That you had also asked several questions. And then the verbiage that you had stated was why and how Ceremony Del Rey could be considered as a surplus, noting that the site is in fact currently is and always has been used for educational use. And then I will also listen back to the video to get exactly what you had stated.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
So can
so,
I make a motion to accept that change, including the language that trustee Ochipendi sends to Ms. Johnson?
roll call vote?
Okay. Trustee Ochipendi? Trustee Salahuddin?
Aye.
Garrett?
Aye.
Vice President Lee?
Aye.
President Tejada?
Aye. Student trustees as well?
Student Trustee Huazano?
Aye.
Student Trustee Kerr? Student Trustee Abazarea?
Aye.
Student Trustee Green?
So now on to the other paragraph.
I would like to keep Jose Villalobos' name in the comments, or in the minutes, because he did speak to receiving the information on enrollment projections, and he said that they were received, and that is what they used to base their judgment. So I think stating that in the minutes is okay.
I would say that stating that he received the information and presented on it would be different than saying that, including the first sentence where it states that they made a judgment call, meaning they were agreed or disagreed. I didn't gather that from the presentation or the responses, and in fact, I didn't get a full response to my questions, but that was stated. So I would say if his name must be kept, it should be in the context of what he spoke to, which would be a factual representation of what he spoke to. And if that were to be in the second sentence, that would be different. If they, you could say you should include, I think we primarily should include the primary presenter as well, which was Ben Schaefer, I believe.
Okay.
And you could say both their names, or you could say the committee, or
So-
whatever it was, it
so-
should be clear.
So can we put trustee Salahuddin, Tina Van Rampart, Jose Villalobos, Ben Schaefer, and President Tejada, and then just go share that multiple projection studies have been done? Can we just go do that and then finish that out, that paragraph out?
That's accurate.
I would say yes, although the final part of that paragraph, I would say, and that there is enough space at our sites to accommodate any increase in enrollment. I don't believe that was finalized in the discussion. I believe that was discussed. But in terms of sharing the information, that would be one thing. But the final part of the sentence should be separate. I don't believe that was
Okay,
the final conclusion of their presentation.
Well, I think that it was shared. So all of that was shared. And I think it's accurate. So we can have a motion to change the language of this paragraph per what Ms. Salahuddin, I'm going to ask for a motion per what Ms. Salahuddin suggested.
There's a hand up.
Yes.
So I agree with Mr. Ochupinti that when he was asking the question about the, about the validity of the report, like those questions weren't answered. But I think this is saying that this is what the report said, right? So we're just clearly stating that the report indicated that this was said. Your questions about whether the report was accurate are also reflected in here. So I think it's okay to do both, because I think are we cool there?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so I make a motion to make the change that I stated, but trustee Salahuddin, associate superintendent Tina Van Rampers, Jose Villalobos, Ben Schaefer, and President Tejada also share that multiple projection studies have been done, local K schools are under-enrolled, and that there is enough space at our sites to accommodate an increase in enrollment. And then, that's my motion.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Green? Student trustee Abazarea? Student trustee Her? Student trustee Huazano? Trustee Ochapenti? Trustee Salahuddin?
Aye.
Trustee Ian Garrett?
Aye.
Vice President Lee?
Aye.
President Tejada?
We have a motion to approve the board meeting minutes of October 5th.
So moved.
Question? All in favor?
Aye.
There's no report out of closed session. And now on to communications. I'll start with our student trustees. Mr. Green?
Nothing to report at the moment.
Abusarea?
So last week was the ninth grade elections. So we have our ninth grade officers for the 2021-2022 school year. And then on Friday, there was so for Halloween, there were several candy stations set up throughout the school. So students could grab a piece of candy, and then one of the stations was I think a drawing activity, and then the other station had share some positivity, something you're thankful for. There was good participation in that. I think it's something that student government plans to continue on in the next years, because there seemed to be a lot of student engagement with that activity. And then for this week, there's a CSU and UC application workshop planned tomorrow, as well as 2 more planned next Wednesday, which is November 10th, and then also November 17th. I think I had something else. A couple players from our girls tennis team qualified for PALs, which was,
Oh, yay.
and our girls volleyball team also qualified for CCS.
Awesome.
Yes, CCS. I think there's a game tonight for that as well. And I think with that, that is all I have to report for tonight.
So we recently had rally outside for the first time. I know a lot of other schools have, and it was really successful for it being such a new concept. A lot of the classes have been doing a ton of fundraisers and raising a lot of money, and we've seen a lot of participation in these events. Oceana's Advisory Council, which is a council made up of 1 to 2 representatives from each advisory, has been meeting every month, and we've talked about student support such as peer tutoring, which has been really helpful. We've gotten feedback about peer tutoring for community service in the library after school, and including course advisories, like we used to have math advisory, which was really helpful. We also talked about COVID safety in school lunches that has gone to academic council, and because we've had so many representatives this year, it has been really good for communication with academic council. We've had really good discussions, and I think that's it.
Great, thank you. Ms. Wasson?
2 weeks ago, I believe Wednesday night, we had our open house, which another student and I spoke at. And then I would say it went well. We had like a good turnout. And then we've also had 8th grade tours, so they've been coming in during classes. There was an English teacher who resigned, which a lot of other teachers had to contribute, which was causing stress. But other than that, I believe that they're doing interviews, so that's good. And then last week was short because we had a power outage at our school, so we had Monday and Tuesday off. And then that Friday we had food fair as well. And then the following day we had homecoming, which both went really well. And then starting Friday, our peer helping class will be going into the adult school here and volunteering, which, yeah, so I thought that was cool. And then fall sports are coming to an end and winter sports are starting back up. So a lot of teams are doing tryouts and yeah.
Mr. Chapinti?
Yeah. First off, happy Native American Heritage Month, Indigenous Peoples Heritage Month. We celebrate these months, of course, all year, and we know that every day is a day to celebrate our cultures and learn from them and share them. In that spirit, I want to first say, as a land acknowledgement, that we are on unceded, stolen land, unceded Ramaytush Ohlone land, and to recognize that in our community is not only necessary but powerful in that we're acknowledging the inequities and historical inequities that we talk about when we talk about equity in education and even our board equity statement. So first I want to say that. Also, it is of course a month to us to recognize and acknowledge what that means in policy, in public policy and education, and how we can not only reflect on these things but take action and empower our community to be a part of that, especially here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Secondly, just to note that the good work being done around COVID-19 and you know, with seeing cases pop up around the Bay Area and different things is to kind of also note the progress in vaccinations, that some school districts are still meeting, obviously, in person for school board meetings. We did take action our October 19th meeting to make sure that people have a negative test, if not are vaccinated and attending in person. In the spirit of providing continued public access, the San Francisco Unified School District has made a resolution that would encourage our board and our district to adopt as well, that basically supports ongoing access to our community to access these board meetings online, virtually, as well as in person, with respect to, of course, public health guidelines and whatever the latest updates are, which we have a director working on duly, and in addition to just best practices in public policy and communications to make sure that our community knows they can show up to our meetings, whether it's in person or virtually. And I have forwarded that resolution as well, so hopefully we can consider that in the future, near future. In addition to that, one thing I have to know for public record is that at our prior meeting, I was approached after the meeting by our board president and pulled to the side room to basically receive a scolding, some kind of verbal assault. Unfortunately, President Rosie Tejada decided that she would take that opportunity after I was leaving the boardroom and walking in the opposite direction to tell me that I was uncivil, that I was petty, that I was aggressive, that I should hold a mirror up to my face and see how I look. And in fact, that before I could get a word in edgewise, after telling her that actions speak louder than words, because of our disagreements in these board meetings, that she was a damn good president, and that's why I'll never be one. Referring to me. So just to note this, my response was that it was inappropriate, unprofessional, and that her request to speak to me after the meeting was inappropriate, especially after speaking to a student trustee. As a teacher, I take it very seriously how we interact with and present ourselves, not only in public, but in what maybe President Tejada thought was in private. This is a public meeting directly after a meeting where I am actually catching a bus home. I don't appreciate being accosted, lectured, and scolded, and insulted. So, one, I would like to say for the record that I think this kind of behavior is inappropriate in any profession. Secondly, all apologies aside, I do believe actions speak louder than words. As a teacher, we try to create safe spaces in our classrooms and outside the classroom. As a board member, I expect the same thing from anybody in the community. Freedom of speech is the bottom line. But when you cross lines and violate those boundaries, especially for me as a professional in our community, I make a point to never, ever violate that space. And so I'm going out of my way to go home and I receive that kind of treatment. I think it sends the exact wrong message, not only to our student trustees, but to our community, even if it's off camera. So I want to apologize on behalf of that interaction to our entire district community here who is present to witness that or see the end of it, because I want to make sure that when I'm here, that I'm also safe in my public speech and that this does not happen again, whether it's an email, which I have received threatening emails from the president of the board here, and in working to be as restorative as possible and as professional as possible, that I encourage every board member here to exercise some civic grace, some professionalism, and some temperament in navigating our duties, both politically and professionally. With that, I would actually recommend that President Tejada's role on our student trustee committee, working with Student Advisory Council, be brought to an end at this moment. In fact, I would ask, based on other interactions with other board members, including Trustee Salahuddin, and seeing the context of emails I was not privy to, talk about me and violate the trust that I put in other trustees, that our student trustee committee be disbanded and we allow our student trustees to operate independently. I do have faith in every one of our students, whether they're on this board or in our classrooms, to be critical thinkers, to make decisions responsibly, and to navigate it independently, especially at times when there's so much political pressure on our community, not only over a housing and real estate development project and saving a garden or a public park like Westmore Park, but over every issue that's relevant to public education. And I want to keep that space and hold that space open so that we can all navigate that professionally and responsibly. So I will ask that, respectfully, Trustees Salahuddin and Tejada step down from that committee and allow the students to operate independently, which I have full faith they can do, and better than anybody, I think, because they're closest to the classroom and the work that's being done if we are a student-centered district, in fact. I say that as a teacher, as a trustee, and as somebody who grew up in this community as a kid who went to this district. So that said, I want to leave that there as a recommendation and something I would ask from the rest of the board to consider as well. I cannot be the only upstander on this board to call out this kind of behavior. I do expect a public statement as well. That said, Feliz Dia de los Muertos, and I'm looking for the rest of the board meeting.
Salahuddin?
So I'm just gonna take a minute.
Okay.
Um,
Come back?
no, I just feel like just need to pause for a sec.
Okay.
I just need to pause for a sec. Okay, so, I hear you. Thank you for your comments. I will take them into consideration. But I will counter that, I really try to, and I may fail, but I really do try to be a light in the room with the student trustees to just answer questions or help, but that they are a group that does run independently. And if they ever tell me that I am not doing that duty faithfully, I would happily step down. So, I take that into consideration. And I am humble enough to know that, I'm human and I make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. And I'm open to hearing feedback, not just from you, but also from our student trustees. So if I have done anything that they feel is inappropriate, please let me know. And if I have, I apologize. So with that, I'm just going to move on with what I was going to say, which is that I wanted to thank everyone that came and supported the district at the city council meeting. I was very happy to see the support and also to see the support of not of current members of the district, but also past members of the district. So that was really great. And it was kind of a nice bridge to be with the folks that were around and in charge when I started my journey as a school board member, to just be working with them again. So it was really nice. I will also wanted to call out that I am really active outside of my role as a school board member, and it helps me stay grounded in things that are important for the community. And one of the things that is really important to me is the issue of ICE transfers out of the county. San Mateo County has the highest ICE transfer rate in the state of California. So to just give it some context, in 2020, Marin County had no transfers, neither did San Francisco County, neither did Contra Costa County, neither did Napa or Santa Clara County. Sonoma County also had 0. Solano County had 1, Alameda County had 8, and San Mateo County had 26 ICE transfers. So knowing the makeup of our community, we are one of the districts that are hit the hardest when a family member is just out of the blue picked up and transferred out of the county with ICE. So that we're talking about a student's, parent, brother, sister, grandparent, et cetera. And a lot of times, if it's a caregiver, that could be, losing a family member is hard, not even putting that in context, but you also have to take it in context, like, was this somebody that was providing rent? Was this somebody that was providing a shelter? So there's a law in the state of California where you have to have an annual forum if you are a county that still transfers our citizens to ICE. And that it's called the Truth Act Forum, and that is taking place tomorrow at 6 p.m. If you search on Facebook, there's information on how to participate. And it really is just a way to just, the county sheriff is there to just speak to the injustice of what is happening. And in talking about what happened during COVID, the community that is preyed on by ICE held all of us up through COVID. So to have to worry on top of doing everything and working and trying to provide a roof over everyone's head, and usually working multiple jobs, and on top of that, that you may walk out of your work or walk out of your home in the morning and just be picked up and transferred by ICE, to me is unconscionable. So if you have the time to speak up at that forum, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
The name of the forum again?
It's called the Truth Act Forum.
I'd just like to quickly acknowledge that I love hearing all the student trustees reporting at all our board meetings. It's just nice to hear that there are activities happening at all the schools again, and that you're able to engage and interact and be a community again instead of being on Zoom. So I just want to share that. Thank you for always sharing that, and it's so nice to be connected even though we're not able to go to the schools all the time, to while I would love to not work and come to all the activities, that is not possible. But so I just want to say appreciate that. And also I just love seeing all the pictures as well as all the teachers and staff celebrating Halloween and wearing all your costumes. It's so nice to see the district, all the schools and stuff as their own family, and that you all engage with each other and create a community. So I know, everyone here serves students, but, doing these activities, also you're serving each other as well and encouraging others. And so it's really nice to see that. So I just appreciate seeing all those pictures. So thank you for sharing, Mr. Warden, always communicating with us all those wonderful posts. And yes, and I saw your costume. It was fantastic. And Chelsea over there too, that you won the award for best group costume at the district office. So anyway, I just loved it. So, and then also Ms. Phillips did reach out about sharing pictures for Dias de los Muertos. I wish I actually had more time that I could put a picture of my dad there to participate. So anyway, it was very touching that all the schools do celebrate, our culture in the community as well, and not just celebrate, certain holidays, but and just be inclusive to everyone and all the students. So thank you.
Excuse me. A couple of things. First off, it was a pleasure last week to have a chance to speak to the Terra Nova PTO. It's been a number of years since I've been attending one of their meetings, and Ms. Preston and Ms. Tejada were there too, so we were able to talk about things going on at the district level. And it was good to see some familiar faces for me, certainly having been a part of that community for many years, and to see some newer faces as well, and the questions that they asked it. So that was really refreshing to be able to do that. Being able to attend the Westmore open house last week, which was good. Good to see all the, the 8th graders really do look young. And their families, and it was fun to get to talk to some of the parents or to watch some of the students translate for their parents as we were talking to them. So that was really it was just good to see that sense of normalcy once again, to see families touring our schools and asking questions about our programs. And then I know it's coming up in the consent agenda, but I just want to highlight the Oceana interim. And it's nice to see that on the calendar again. And the creativity of our staff to come up with some really cool interim programs. I know, Ms. Furr, you're probably excited about them all, I'm sure. And I can't imagine being a student having to pick through that incredible list of activities. So if you have a chance, if you haven't looked at them, take a look at them, because it's pretty great. And on one last thing, I will, as long as I'm here, I will continue to fight for the funding for our school district and to continue to find creative ways to do that. And sometimes our job is made much more difficult when campaigns of misinformation and lies are thrown in front of us. And really, it just makes our job collectively as a community that much harder to do the right thing, to be able to do the things like the Oceana interim. It's heartbreaking to see that there's actually requests potentially of students for some of those programs for financial support. That shouldn't have to be. If we can do the things that we have been talking about for the past several years now, and the things that we have been ramping up to try and get support for over the past several weeks, these students wouldn't have to pay the $20 fee to be able to do a field trip during the Oceana interim. We would be able to do more for our staff. We would be able to do more ultimately for all of our students. So it's just disheartening that we've had to fight through misinformation and lies over the past several months. And but we will persist. We will continue, and we will make this happen. So thank you.
So I also, I attended the Terra Nova PTO meeting. It was really great to connect with parents. And I also presented on our Ceremony Del Rey project to the parents in the audience at the open house at Jeff. And we have overwhelming support. And but I think the highlight for me was Mr. Green. When he spoke to that crowd of students and parents on advisory, you are captivating. You are amazing. You should always give presentations. You have chemistry. You had them just applauding, and it was just wonderful to see you. And then that you were giving tours, and, you know, I could see students were so comfortable being around you, and parents as well. So I want to thank you for that. Let's see, as to, I also attended the annual governing board meeting for the County Committee of School District Organizations. And then I'm also on the committee, so I had to be in 2 meetings back to back. But I feel it's really important for our district that I serve on that committee. And then as to our Student Advisory Council, I hear Mr. Ochapinti, and I've always said to our students, we started the Student Advisory Council. It's grown into something really amazing. And if I'm ever out of line, I would expect our students are very vocal, but we basically just sit back and answer questions, and they're very autonomous. They choose what they want to do and discuss. And I just order the pizza and bring the Pocky, the dessert. So, but it's always just a marvel for me to watch them interact and to learn from them. I learn so much from them because they're in the schools and I am not. As to what Mr. Ochapinti said about our conversation last week, I don't want to even dignify a response, but because I know my children will be watching this, I feel like I should. And all I would say is that I attempted to speak with him privately about how things worked in the meeting. And I tried very civilly. But it became quite clear to me he was comfortable yelling at a woman of color, one of the few elected in this county. And that's all I'm going to say to that right now, because, the goal of the evening, the goal of this board is to conduct the business of the district. And we need to return to that, focus on that. That's what's important. My job as president is to make sure that we do it expeditiously and thoughtfully. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Presta.
Thank you, President Tejada. I want to echo some of the sentiments from earlier about the open houses at all of the high schools. So Oceana's is coming up, I think it's next week, maybe the week after. And so, but I've attended all of the others. I have an 8th grader. My son is in 8th grade, so I'm actually attending as a parent as well, which I don't often mention in these board meetings. But it's been really, really awesome to kind of go on the tours with him and walk with the student leaders. And I will echo, Mr. Green was awesome, and there were lots of awesome student leaders at all of the schools, taking us around, talking about the different classes, answering questions, and I've just been very, very proud of our school district. So it's been really, really nice. Not a lot to report, really. I met with some of our partner district superintendents last week. We do it periodically to kind of keep in touch, do some articulation. This Friday, we are all going to be having lunch with Supervisor David Canepa. Again, just to kind of keep in touch, talk to him about local issues, so that's going to be really good. And I also want to give a shout out to our district office Sunshine Committee. So we and some of Mr. Worden and Ms. Lujan are on the committee. I'm looking around the room. I'm probably missing people. I'm not sure, because I'm not part of the committee. I just get to take advantage of it. Are you on the subject committee? Thank you. Chelsea, my assistant, is on it. And so it's actually been it's the feel, it's very hard right now, all around. Like, we read articles, we don't even need to read the articles. This year is harder than any other year that I have been in education. Harder than last year when we were at home. Like, it is really, really difficult, I think, for everybody. And through this, there are these spots of real light and people coming together to celebrate each other and to focus on the good that we have here right now. And last week was just one of those weeks where there was a lot of that. And it was Halloween and people dressing up more than I think I've ever seen people dress up for Halloween. Dia de los Muertos celebrations and just a lot of, I don't know, camaraderie, for the lack of a better word. And it felt really good. So just feeling very proud of our district and the many positive things going on.
And Ms. Casey, the AFT Local 1481 report.
Good evening. Thank you. I only have a few things today. I do send out an email. It's kind of funny because people are like, I'm not in the union and I get your email. Am I not supposed to? But there's information on there. So even if you're not a union member, I think some of the information on there is important for everyone to see. Some of it is from the San Mateo Labor Council. For example, there's a women's soccer pledge to sign the pledge to have equal pay. There's all sorts of union information, but it is appropriate for anyone to see. So if it's not, I wouldn't send it through the district email. I'm hoping also that some of the staff share some of these items with students, so I'm going to encourage that. So for example, there's something called TIP, and it's through San Mateo Labor Council, and it's to train students in the, sorry, let me see if I can find it, in the trades, so that they can try different trades and see which one they're interested in the most and kind of get their bearings, and it's a really good program. That starts in January. I also wanted to mention that I went to Jefferson and celebrated John Mayer's 40th year retirement. Can you imagine? So congratulations to him on his retirement. We're working a lot on negotiations right now, so we're going to be starting those very soon. Every Tuesday from 3 to 4:30, I have a union chat, so members jump on either Zoom or sometimes I'm at a site and I do room and Zoom, which is hard, but I figure it's the best way to hear from everybody. And sometimes there's a bunch of people that come on, and sometimes there's just a few. So today was one of those just a few. People are really tired and stressed. And like Ms. Presta was saying, it's amazing how this is in a lot of ways harder than last year. The stress level and worry is just a little bit higher. But I am glad that we're getting tested and we're starting to have students be tested. If they choose, I'm hoping that eventually they get tested anyway, whether or not they're choosing. I think many of the adults would appreciate that. And then the last thing is that the next 4 nights, I will be at the Executive Council for the CFT. I'm on the Executive Council. So every evening I have a meeting, and all day Saturday for the Executive Council for CFT. So just so you know. So my day job, and then I go to my evening job. And, you know, the nice thing about it is that I get to see people from up and down the state. And we talk, and everyone's going through a lot of the same things we are. And then, you know, you learn things, and then you can bring them back and apply them. So that's the nice thing. We're always learning. We're always trying to do better, and we're always, you know, looking to see what can be done to make education better for our students. So, thank you.
Now for the COVID-19 response update from Director Jones.
Good evening. Nice to see you all tonight. Individual PCR testing for staff has now happened at all of our school sites. The times have been changed to reflect some struggles we've had with meeting the pickup times and getting test results back in a timely manner. The pickup time is at 3 o'clock locally, and we've been trying to find a way to make sure we can get testing done and meet that pickup time so that results come back timely. So we've had a change. Testing's happening weekly on the same day of the week at each site, starting between 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning, depending on the site, and ending at 2 p.m. at all sites except the district office, which ends at 3 o'clock. The sites are testing as follows. Monday in the morning is Thornton. Afternoon is district office and adult school. Tuesday is Jefferson. Wednesday is Westmore. Thursday is Terra Nova. And Friday is Oceana. Staff testing has caught 2 positive cases, both at Westmore. Student testing has started this week. Students are testing on the same day as staff, and all students who wish to test may do so before school, during brunch, and during lunch. The number of COVID positive cases spiked up at the end of October, but we're still on a downward trend for the school year. In September, there were a total of 16 cases. In October, we had 7, and so far in November, we've had 2. Tracking has started for all staff who are required to test due to either being unvaccinated, having not provided proof of vaccination, or having chosen not to disclose their vaccination status. Mandatory testing is required as of October 15th. There are 39 people who have not yet tested and are required to do so, and progressive discipline is now starting for those people. And rapid antigen testing for staff will start this week. Notification will be sent to all of our COVID-19 site coordinators to let them know about that. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Question.
Oh, go ahead.
What happens if they refuse to test?
It'll be progressive discipline as outlined in their individual contracts. So depending on whether they're certificated or classified. So it'll be, it's how the contracts are set up. Did that answer your question?
So contract, progressive discipline, just regular progressive discipline per regular contract? Okay.
Yes.
You want us to explain what progressive discipline
I know what
is?
it is, I'm just making sure.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not questioning, I'm just saying
That'd be
the
great.
Oh, I see.
people may not know.
Oh, yeah.
So, and HR can jump in if they'd like, but essentially what happens with progressive discipline is it's self-explanatory kind of, it progresses. So you start out giving people a verbal warning, giving an employee a verbal warning that, it is mandatory that you be tested, and, do you need help, like basically really low level. But progressive discipline means that you get a verbal warning, then you get a written warning, and then the discipline gets higher and higher. So that's really vague, but it just basically means the discipline ramps up as you go. Hopefully, it's a verbal thing, and then I think most of the time if people aren't getting tested, it's because there's some miscommunication, something like that. So we're hoping that that's all it is. Do you guys want to add anything to that? It was pretty vague, but.
Yeah, and I just, and also, the progressive discipline happens with their supervisor, their site supervisor. It's not from the district office, it's whoever their site supervisor is. And so, obviously, our job is to figure out what the reasoning is and how we can help support them, just like we would do with any other situation.
So do we have a plan if they refuse to test?
Well, I think that the final in discipline is termination, right? So
how long would that process be?
So each time they refuse, it progresses to the next level.
So basically you get a verbal warning, a written warning, you get a letter of discipline. You can go like 3 different levels up before you get to termination.
Yeah, I get that. So I mean,
it's hard to give a time frame on that.
Right. So I'm just, so a person could possibly be in school untested for weeks, months? Maybe. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. That's it.
11, we have the information correspondence. And now on to the consent agenda items.
Move to approve consent.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And do we have any public comment?
We do not have any public comment tonight.
Okay. And for our discussion items, I'm going to, let's start with Mr. Warden.
President Tejada, members of the board, student trustees, and executive cabinet. I had the opportunity to sit with the Jefferson High School Centennial Committee. As we know, Jefferson High School, along with our district, they turn 100 in 2022. So I'd like to be the first, after meeting with that committee, to share the press release that will go with Jefferson High School's centennial celebration. On Saturday, March 26, 2022, Jefferson High School will celebrate its 100th anniversary. This monumental day will showcase the history of the school and the recognition of alumni, along with hosting presentations, food booths, games, contest speakers, community groups, and more. For information on this event, you can contact their Director of Student Activities, Martine Kelsch. So with that said, that will be rolled out to all of our media, but we wanted to share this with the board first.
Questions? All right.
Thank you.
The 2021-22 JUHSD enrollment update, Ms. Basuino.
Whoa.
We're grateful you're doing it.
Why does it keep going to that?
There it
we go.
is.
Got it.
All right. Good evening, President Tejada, members of the board. Tonight, I will be presenting our enrollment analysis report. We will be using data found in the uncertified CalPADS report from the October 6th Census Day. JUHSD's total student population is currently 3,997. This number includes students in adult transition, at non-public schools, and students in remote independent study. There has been a gradual increase in enrollment of both English language learners and students with special needs during the past 3 years, with the number of EL students increasing 2% and students with IEPs increasing 3%. And the percent of students eligible for free and reduced meals has declined roughly 1% per year for the last 3 years. In this slide, you can see the ethnic breakdown in both the number and percent. The trend that we have seen is in 2018-19, there were more Filipino students than Hispanic students. And now you can see that the reverse is true, with Filipino students at 28.2% and Hispanic Latino students at 32.2%. This graph that you see here shows the enrollment trend compared to the demographer's projection from their 2019 report. In 2019-20, we had a 1.8%. We had 1.8% more students than projected. In 2020-2021, we were 1% less than the projected number. And as you can see, this year, our enrollment is 5.6% less than the number that was projected. And I can tell you, being at my student director meetings for the county, that's is a concern for other schools within our county too. These have been some some discussions that we have been having. Here you can see enrollment for the past several years per school site. At the bottom, we have listed the demographer's projected enrollment for each site as well, as you can see in the lower green. What you can see here, I broke out for percentage-wise for you, is that each school site has decreased from last year. So Jefferson is a 5.8% decrease. Oceana is a 3.6% decrease. Terra Nova is a 1.4%. Thornton is a 33%. And Westmore High School is a 7% decrease from last year. The information we share here is that information that we gather on the last day of school for the last school year. Our registers indicate within Synergy all student exits with exit codes. So what you see here is we had 30 students transfer within the district that moved from one school to another, which is not unusual. And then we had 12 students leave out of state. We had 4 leave for private school and 3 left out of the country. The big number is 109, and that's a number of, we call it an in-state transfer, and those are students that have more than likely moved out of our district enrollment and have moved in somebody else's district. So the breakdown there is San Mateo 15, so you can just see the numbers there, and you can see a lot have moved across the bay. It's a total of 59 freshmen, 58 sophomores, and 48 juniors. So just to wrap it up, it's just the findings are that, I'm fast, the findings that there's a 5.6% decrease in our enrollment from last year, slight increase in percentage of students learning English, a slight increase in percentage of students with IEPs, and then the majority of students enrolled are Hispanic, Latino, followed closely by Filipino. And we did have a limited enrollment outreach last year due to COVID. What we have done for this school year is we've had our in-person high school fair, and some of you were there and noticed that it was a pretty good turnout, a very decent turnout. We're doing in-person open houses, which I have been to all of them, and we'll go to Oceana's as well, so I can answer any questions about enrollment. And they have been fairly well attended. I think the kids are excited and the families are excited to do things in person again. The students have been amazing. And then we had, thanks to our guy Austin over here, we had very early communication to our partner schools with our enrollment and how it works. And so all the parents have received an email. And then we're also doing in-person shadowing, which is another, or tours, depending on their school and how they like it. So super excited about what I've seen so far, and getting positive feedback from the parents that have been attending. So, and last but not least, questions all go to Corinne.
Do we have any questions from our student trustees? Dr. Pinty?
Yeah, so thank you for this. Yes, and it's important to know, I think, with the changing conditions in our community due to COVID and during the last 2 years, just understanding the pressures in terms of education, of course, public education, housing, employment, and the changing just landscape in terms of even with ongoing vaccinations and mandates, what different industries will look like, but also what a living wage looks like and what the impacts on our family and communities are going to look like. Just to reference also another item on our agenda, I'm not sure if we're going to get to it or not, but the grand jury report, essentially discussing diversity and some of the impacts for our educators are reflected a lot of times in the families and students in our community. As somebody who is Latino and who's experienced this and thankful to still be able to barely afford to live here, like, these numbers, I think, reflect the deeper needs in our community, especially to retain educators who are finding it hard due to just historical and ongoing discrimination in terms of employment and higher education. And then our students to see that and see their teachers come and go during the financial pressures. I think it's duly important to recognize that the pressures of our staff and faculty in our district are felt and reflected in our community that we're not seeing anymore because some of them may be leaving to attend other districts where it's more affordable for them to live because it's simply unaffordable in many places in our community. So enrollment trends I think are important to look at. We discussed this at our prior meeting. One thing I think that we should account for or maybe hope to look to contribute to is looking at who is doing affordable housing in our community, who is providing mutual aid and services to our community in need. A lot of our district has benefited from, say, the free meal distribution and opening that up over, the summer, of course, over the past year and a half. But the kind of things we need from county, state, and federal aid, which we've seen to our district through COVID funding, hopefully will retain students and increase enrollment. And so projected enrollment is always important to see, as concerning as it is. Hopefully we can find actually creative, in reimagining how we can create measures to support our community who is still here and give them some hope in terms of long-term vision of how they can live here and not have to face the same hurdles 1, 2, or 10 years down the road. So I guess my only question would be, too, is the input from the community. What kind of input did you get in terms of people, and did they know about this data in advance, or did you just seek input in terms of the trends that were there? Because I know you mentioned community input there.
No, when I talked about community, I don't know where you saw community input. What I was saying was I spoke to parents at back to school night, and I've been getting feedback from them, and it's been nice to be able to engage with them in person again. But I did want to just comment on one of the things you said, which I think is super important, is I just want to stress how important our wellness staff has been, because all those things you mentioned about finding housing and making sure they have access to community resources and stuff, I think is something our wellness counselors have been amazing at and getting people access. And so, I think it's super important that we remind everybody that we have that information, and there's stuff on our website. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
My first reaction is financial, where I think I'm glad we're not an LCFF funded district. So that's a good thing. Doesn't mean that it solves everything, obviously, because we're basic aid, because we're all well versed with the state of the budget. That said, I'm heartened to hear, having seen the open house at Westmore, and I know the feedback both from the high school fair and the different open houses, it's pretty clear people are interested, and I think it is, and it's clear when you see that year-over-year decline, that's definitely a COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then looking at the in-state transfers, it's sort of not lost on any of us that a lot of these folks, a lot of families did move to much more affordable areas of the Bay Area, for sure. And we were talking within district transfer, that's just students moving from from Oceana to Westmore, et cetera, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, just wanted to clarify that. I mean, it's the data is what it is, and thank you. It's the demographers never could have factored in a global pandemic at the time we did this in 2020. So there we go. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. My only question is the students that are going, the 103 or whatever it was, that are going to Contra Costa, all the other places, those are not inner districts out. Those are actually students who moved.
Physically moved. There are a few that might have moved, but their parents work right here. They kept these jobs. So those are the parents we work with to try to keep those students, of course. But these are people that the whole family and their job moved.
Difficult situation. I know a student who whose family moved to Roseville, but she wanted to complete her senior year at Jefferson. So she is living with her grandmother here. So it's, and my daughter's lost a lot of friends who've moved out of the area because their parents had to find jobs elsewhere. But I'm hoping the numbers, I just have seen the outreach at the open houses and back to school nights. And I'm hopeful because we have a great district. And I just thank you for bringing this to us. Okay. Thank you very much. And now, we're going to the Summit Shasta Annual Update to the Board of Education.
We're going to welcome.
And yes, so Ms. Baca, you're going to be
Putting
setting this up for Ms. Maletsky.
She's multitasking.
Okay, great, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late getting here. Our volleyball was in the first round of the CCS playoffs, and they just won across the street. So I was the administrator of the game, so apologies for being a few minutes late. If I haven't met you, my name is Ren Maletsky. I'm the executive director at Summit Shasta. This is my 6th year as the school leader at Summit Shasta, and so it's nice to see you all for the 6th year in a row so that I can give you an update on Shasta and hopefully answer any questions that you have about our school. All right. Our mission, I always like to start with, is to prepare a diverse student population for success in a 4-year college or university and to be thoughtful, contributing members of society. That's been the same mission we've had. I know you hear that from me every year, but I always like to start to kind of ground the introduction to our school and where we currently are. Our vision has also stayed the same over the past 7 years. So every student is equipped to lead a fulfilled life, one with purpose, financial independence, community, strong relationships, and health. I will say that vision was tested for sure in the last few years in the midst of virtual learning and the pandemic and all of those pieces. And so I've added in some specific slides this year to reflect on how kind of the pandemic impacted our school over that time frame. And then the last thing I just wanted to remind everyone here about is these are our 4 student outcomes that we have at our school. They've remained unchanged since Shasta's founding. And then we continue to use one-to-one mentoring, real-world projects, and then also the individualized pathways to support students at our school. So when we're talking about the different elements of our day, those foundational pieces are still really key to our school model. So would love to dive into looking at our school in review. These are our school goals set by me and the rest of our administrative team for this school year. Our target for attendance is to have an ADA of 95%. This is a little bit lower than I know what I've presented to the board in the past based on some of the COVID quarantine and other things that we know are in place. Our second goal around academics is that all Black Bears, sorry, we're the Shasta Black Bears, but all Black Bears will access, engage, and grow in skill development, content, and habits throughout the year. And then our culture goal is that all Black Bears feel a sense of belonging and attachment to our community. I will say the culture goal has been the main focus of our school as we come back to campus, and we've had a little bit of a less of a focus on the academics. In terms of the Summit Shasta faculty, our administrative staff is made up of 6 people. I'm the executive director. We have 2 deans of instruction and culture, a dean of operations, a community engagement manager, and an office assistant. Many of you met Ava, who was our longtime assistant director. I think she presented to you one time when I was on maternity leave. She has transitioned away from Shasta, and so Laura Friday is our new dean of culture and instruction. Laura was an English teacher at Shasta for 4 years before she moved into school leadership. We currently have 20 full-time faculty members, 1 paraprofessional, and 1 instructional aide, and we are still not fully hired. I know that is also a nationwide issue. We have not yet hired for Spanish, so I have been teaching Spanish for the last month as well. And we started the year not fully hired in math, and so we hired a math teacher at the end of September, just to give you a realistic view of where we are. And then we do have 3 residents that are currently in the Summit Teacher Residency Program. They are interning with teachers this year in math and English. All right, in terms of enrollment and demographics, you can see, thank you, you can see our overall enrollment for this school year is 460. I do want to apologize. The 9th and 10th grade numbers up there are correct, but 11th and 12th grade, when I was looking over my notes, I realized do not have the accurate numbers. So 11th grade is 106 and 12th grade is currently 125. I know I've talked over the last 4 years about that very large class, and they are seniors this year that will be graduating. So if you were looking at those numbers and thinking that doesn't add to 460, I just wanted to flag that for you. You can see this is our demographic data that we pulled from the end of last year. So you can see the percent of students in special education is 7.1, ELLs is 4.3%. Our percentage of students that are socioeconomically disadvantaged has slowly continued to increase. I think when I started making these presentations, we were at 17%, and so now it's up to 25%. And then you can see the breakdown of race, ethnicity. In terms of the class of 2025, which is our 9th grade class, there's 112 9th graders. 27 of them are siblings of either current or former Shasta students. 100% of our students live within the Jefferson Union district boundaries, and then they're coming from 36 different middle schools. So I listed the ones up there that are most represented. So this year it's Fernando Rivera is where almost a quarter of our freshman class is coming from. We do have 42 of our 9th graders also were in private middle schools coming to Shasta, so it's a pretty substantial number as well. I did want to share our attendance data from Shasta, and I decided this year to put a number of years so we could see the comparison. Last year, our attendance data was calculated at 99%. I did want to flag that was based on Zoom logins and platform logins, so that is not the in-person attendance data for our school. The 96.1% actually is our current data to date at Shasta in terms of how our attendance is going. I will say even in the last 2 weeks, we've started to see a drop off with that as like flu season starts and there's more colds as students are away from campus. This is a snapshot of our daily schedule. So our school day continues to start with classes at 8:20 and then ends at 3:20 with an intervention block. We are on an A-B schedule this year, so students are taking 3 project time blocks between 9:30 and 2:30 every day. And then we continue to offer office hours and after-school activities in the afternoon. And then this is our college data. So you can see the snapshot from our first 5 graduating classes. Last year, our students did incredibly well. 100% of them were accepted to college. We did have 2 full scholarship Posse Scholars in the class of 2021, as well as a Questbridge Scholar, which was very exciting. We also got our first ever student into Harvard who is attending, so that was exciting, as well as some other impressive private colleges up there. And then we continue to have a lot of our students attend UCs and CSUs. We sent almost 10 students to Davis last year, and I think over a third of our class went to UCs. So that's predominantly where the majority of Shasta students are attending. All right, so in terms of returning from virtual school, we reopened our campus in April of last school year. Over the course of 3 different waves, we got to approximately 25% of our students were back on campus, and 100% of our students are back now. Our faculty return was voluntary. Summit Public Schools, the faculty are unionized, and so that was a negotiation between our superintendent and the teachers union for that. We did offer teachers a small stipend if they were willing to return to campus. Approximately 50% of our teachers did opt to return to campus, so we were able to meet the demand of our students, and we worked under a workstation model. In terms of how we supported the transition to campus this year, we had a full week of orientation activities to launch the year in August. So there was a big focus on community building, making sure students felt like they were ready to come back. And that continued to be our priority for the first 6 weeks of the year. We also prioritize that with faculty community building. We have a relatively new faculty this year. We had about 6 or 7 teachers leave. which in a faculty of 20 is a pretty substantial number. And we replaced them with teachers that are fairly new in their teaching career, some of whom only did virtual student teaching. So this is their first year being in the classroom. And so we took a little bit of a different approach this year in terms of onboarding and making sure it's about team culture and faculty feeling ready to set up the classrooms. I also wanted to add in something we referred to as Summit Together, which was our approach to unfinished learning. Fortunately, at Shasta, we ended the year with very few students last year that did not have credits after the virtual experience. But we wanted to make sure that we created a model that no door is closed for student learning and that no door is closed for students due to grades. We recognize that many of our students had a ton of challenges working from home, some that they were able to share and some not. And so we wanted to make sure that none of the time that they were working from home was unfairly penalizing them for college or things they wanted to do in the future. To do that, we focused on an acceleration versus remediation approach. And so we were very much focusing on the specific skills where students either had scored low while they were virtually so they could get support in that and be ready to be back on campus and excel in grade level content when they were back in our doors. So the design for our unfinished learning really focused on some of the key aspects of our summit model. We relied a lot on the mentoring, which is a foundation piece of our school, project time, which allowed us to focus on certain skills, and then Summit Reads and Summit Solves is our intervention block at the end of the day, which we have designed this year to really support students that may need additional support in catching up from the past 2 years. And then we also made sure that we were continuing to wrap content from the past school year into this school year so we could support students with that learning. So in terms of some highlights from that, 90% of our students ended the school year with passing cognitive skills and concept scores just on their own. And so what we then did is this past summer, we offered a program called Summit Together, where students could come onto campus and either earn back credits or potentially raise their scores in that time. We also offered it as a bridge program to our current freshman and sophomore classes, since many of them had never been on our campus before, and focused a lot on some of the key like literacy and numeracy skills you would need to be successful at school. This year as well, our teachers focused a lot on kind of paring down their courses so that we were really intentional about what we're prioritizing in those classes to ease that transition back to school. So here you can see some of the student progress, and I am showing it over the last 4 years. So a few things hopefully you notice from this. One, we actually have more students that are on track in cog skills and math concepts than in some of the years pre-pandemic. And I think that's happening for a couple of reasons. One, I think students were like ready to be back. They were ready to dive into school when they got back there. Two, I think that our teachers are doing a good job of implementing our model and really streamlining their courses so that we're really focused on the key things in the course that are most important. And then we're very much focusing on the mastery-based grading, so encouraging students to revise as they kind of go through the year. I also thought it would be helpful for you all to see it by subgroup. So this is the same slide with the same information, but you can see it for students with IEPs, multilingual learners, and then also our BIPOC students.
Question about this slide. So it doesn't show like the number of like what, so the multilingual learner, that jump is massive. So I'm wondering if that's because some of your more challenging students left, or so is it throwing off the numbers a little bit?
I think it's a combination of factors. I think our multilingual learners was the group that struggled the most virtually. I think it was really hard for them to engage in Zoom classes. So I think that's why it looks lower in school year 21. We also at Shasta, just to be honest, don't have a huge population of multilingual learners, and we did have some graduate last year.
Okay.
And so I think there was like a fair shift there too.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so in terms of key takeaways, kids are definitely happy to be back in school. I think they are doing much better overall as being in an in-person learning community, so that's been a big shift. I do think that the previewing work in particular was really helpful for our entering ninth grade class and gearing them up for high school and our culture and the norms at our school. And the shifts in our curriculum, I think were the right ones to really focus on community building and streamlining to like, these are the essential things that we need students to be knowing. Despite that, we are still, we do have some students who are struggling to engage. And so I think that's going to be our focus for kind of Q2. How are we engaging those students that are really having a hard time getting back into the swing of being on campus? This is a picture from our club fair from this year. And so to help with that, we do still have a huge focus on student clubs. We have over 40 student clubs at Shasta that are all student-led and student-driven. And so that is one way we're trying to make sure students are seeing the value in being back on campus. I mentioned the volleyball team earlier. Sports has also continued to be a focus. And so a number of our students have signed up to participate in athletics this year. I think almost 40% of our school. So that's been really great to see students jumping back into that. And that's all I have. So I'd love to answer any questions that you all have.
Questions for student trustees? Our board? Mr. Ochapinti?
Yeah, welcome back, first of all. Thank you for your presentation. I know that as a teacher working with students in any classroom setting, in any school setting, this year has been not only a challenge, but a learning experience for educators as well. So just in terms of like with any of our schools and any presentations we've had, thank you for providing, some insight to the community as well, to Summit Shasta, which a lot of our community is aware, is here, and some may be surprised to have seen new buildings in recent years, especially with staff not being in the buildings, right, during COVID. But in returning to that, I think, especially here at the Ceremony Del Rey campus, knowing that there is a high school here, there are students here, and this is their home as well. And so that I think just that speaks to a lot in our community. Also that a lot of our students at Shasta are here from our community, and our school district community is something to note, because a lot of our high school students at all of our high schools know a lot of our students at Shasta. I know, speaking at the graduation with you a little bit, one of my interests was that we find some space for collaboration across campuses within our district community, and Shasta is absolutely a part of that. I guess my first question is, what kind of ways can you see or have you seen for opportunities in terms of that collaboration and communication with our students, faculty, staff, and all around?
Yeah, and thank you again. Nick came to our graduation in the spring, so it was lovely to have him there. I think that there definitely are a lot of avenues for our students to potentially collaborate. I know you all have wonderful student representatives here. I'm sure that Shasta students would love to be a part of that, or at the very least, our students do a lot of internships in the community, and so maybe having them come and share some of their learnings from that experience is definitely something we could set up for the spring. I'll be honest, I actually don't know a ton of the other specific programs and the best ways for us to collaborate with them. Tony's been great in terms of emailing, but I'd be totally open to setting up different ways to collaborate. I think the biggest way we do that is we play the other schools in sports right now. But other than that, I don't think there's a ton of other cross-campus collaboration happening. And so I'd definitely be open to feedback on how to make that better.
The second question would be, in terms of the student population, I know here it says, and I know there are a lot of schools, a lot of students from different school districts, and it says 36 middle schools. Is it 36 students from different middle schools, or 36 middle schools the students came from?
36 middle schools. Yeah. Many of them are I think especially the 42 coming from private schools. A lot of our students, we might have one student that went to a specific private school in San Francisco and one student that went to a very specific one in San Mateo or something. So a lot of them are from across kind of the peninsula community. But yeah, it is 36 different schools.
Yeah, thank you. That's the first part of, I think, just looking at the demographics. The last time we spoke here at the meeting, that demographics and making sure that, we have a fuller picture of our students with special education services, students across the diversity of demographics, of course. I guess one of my questions would be, in terms of returning to school, how did you navigate delivering services in special education. As a teacher in special education, I'm always wondering different approaches. I certainly work with students who use Summit Learning online, and it is effective in some ways. And I think as some of the districts have looked towards independent study, this is being done in major districts and even smaller districts like ours. Where did you see the pros and cons of reaching students with an IEP through virtual learning and the return in phasing in hybrid instruction since then?
Yeah. I think it was a big shift for us in the virtual learning and how we, in particular, structure our learning center, which is what we call the course to support our students with IEPs. Ideally, when it was in person, it was more of a, the teacher would present a lesson on a certain skill and students would dig into that. And it became virtually a little bit more of a kind of a tutoring bar setup where the teacher would be in a Zoom room offering students specific support. I think there was a ton of shifts in how our education specialists use their time to support students. And so they became very flexible with Zoom meetings throughout the day, oftentimes reducing the class size, using the breakout rooms, having students share their screen so they could try to keep them engaged in what they were focusing on. So I think that was one thing. We also did a lot of outreach when we were returning to school in April to try to prioritize students that we really thought would benefit from being back on campus. And many of those were students that struggled with executive functioning, that may be really having a hard time engaging at home or things like that. And so I did not pull that data, but if you looked at the students that returned, it was geared more towards multilingual learners and our diverse learners. It has been a really big shift this year, I would say, going from more of an on-demand tutoring structure to being back in school and having lessons. And so that is something we're still actively navigating right now, is how do you provide services and support students towards achieving their IEP goals when they, frankly, I think really enjoyed a lot of the one-on-one support that they got virtually and via Zoom. So hopefully that helps answer your question.
No, absolutely. That kind of segues into my last question, because I think that holding spaces virtually and in person is very important. And 6 weeks of welcoming back students I've seen that in practice, where beginning the school year was essentially trying to embed that in the instruction is we're back on campus. And a lot of our students, obviously who are freshmen and sophomore, have never experienced high school in person. And so social emotionally, them returning to school has been a learning experience on top of whatever they missed in person through middle school. That said, in terms of space, I understand Summit Shasta is a small school, but in terms of space on campus, how has it been navigating that as a small school? And in terms of the facilities and spaces here at Ceremony Del Rey, do students feel like they have enough space? And are they using spaces here, for example, the gym, or are they has this been a discussion? Certainly the garden has presented an opportunity to be involved here in terms of urban agriculture and green spaces, but there are many things that I think a larger campus benefits our students with, and we've been able to explore that maybe in some campuses, but even in some of our other campuses, they haven't been able to navigate big spaces because we don't want to have too many students in one place. So how is it working at a small school like Shasta?
Yeah, it has been, I would say it's been fairly challenging to navigate. We have 460 students, we have 15 classrooms, and then we have a gym that we use as like 4 instructional spaces. We have had to eliminate some of the things that we used to do, like school-wide rallies and things like that in the gym would just be way too crowded. We did do some events in our orientation week. We rented out all of Gellert Park just so we could go out there and just have more space for students to spread out. We've tried to be thoughtful for the break times we have in the day for lunch. So like the gym is open, our whole indoor courtyard and classrooms are open as well, so students can spread out as much as they can during that time. And then in terms of like COVID protocols, just trying to have as many adults present for supervision to like enforce masking and social distancing as much as possible. I will say, our freshman classes have 32 students in them and it's just a standard classroom. So like they're pretty close together, and so I think we've had to rely a lot on some of the other safety protocols that are in place. In terms of using some of the kind of like Ceremony Del Rey facilities, we do in our expeditions program, there actually is an urban farming class. So I know that they were going down to the garden some. That is something I know we need to coordinate more with Jefferson about, just to make sure that we're meeting like compliance and field trip safety with things like that. So yeah, I would say between that and then Gellert we use pretty routinely. Those are kind of the big open spaces that we use.
You mentioned you had to rent out Gellert Park?
We did, yeah, through the Daly City Parks and Rec. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, in terms of public spaces, this is kind of surprising to hear that you had to rent it out as a school, but we do have other parks, Westmore Park being one of them, being part of our district, and hopefully we can expand some of those activities so we can provide those recreational spaces, especially in terms of wellness and educational uses. But
Yeah.
that's all. Those are all the questions I have at this moment. But thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Salahuddin?
So I have a few questions, but I first will say that when Shasta applied here, they were supposed to be located in Brisbane. Baylands has a huge space, so if they need more space, they can negotiate that. But when they originally negotiated their contract, which I was part of negotiations, that was what we negotiated, that's what they agreed to, so that's where they're located. If they would like to talk about expanding into some other areas, that conversation can happen with our superintendent, but it should not be negotiated or discussed in a board meeting without further, it's the superintendent runs the district, so that conversation should be between our superintendent and Ren. I will ask questions. This presentation didn't include any information on your COVID protocols. Can you just go into your COVID protocols a little bit and talk about have you had issues with positive cases or?
Yeah. We have, so our COVID safety protocols for students to return to campus. We collected vaccination status on all of our students, and if students declined to state, we just assumed that they were unvaccinated. As part of our negotiations with our teachers union, we agreed to test 25% of unvaccinated students every week. So we've continued to do that since the start of the school year, and we use color, and we do that testing on site. We haven't actually had any issues with families refusing that testing, and we're able to collect all the consent forms for that. Masking is obviously still required on campus at all times unless a student is eating or drinking. And then we've increased cleaning and sanitation, and there's lots of hand sanitizer and things like that throughout campus. Since the school year started, we have had 6 confirmed positive cases, and we have sent out bulletins to our school community anytime there is a positive case. We also are requiring all teachers to maintain strict seating charts. So whenever there is a positive case, we do contact tracing. We follow up with each of those families and offer them a COVID test on campus the next day. There haven't actually been any, I don't know what the right, health terminology is, but related cases. So when we've had a positive COVID case and followed up with close contacts, there haven't been additional positive cases related to that. So maybe that's an outbreak. I don't know if that's the right word. Okay, I don't think there's been any outbreaks on campus, but we have had 6 isolated positive cases.
And then I know, in the beginning when all this started, none of us had any idea it was going to go this
Yes.
long. But I know when it first started, the setup of Shasta really led itself into distance learning. But now I'm wondering, coming back, the adjustment of being in person, have you seen issues with just student engagement, getting out of the screen? Yeah.
Yeah. I think, yes, absolutely. We've seen issues with student engagement. I think, to be honest, some of the hardest shifts have been, one, a student not being able to have their cell phone right beside them at any moment, for they probably did when they were home on Zoom all day. So I think that's been a pretty big shift. The rigidity of a schedule, I think, has been a big shift. Our blocks are 85 minutes. And so having that kind of sustained, you're in a classroom listening to a teacher, I think has been hard. Our model, as you said, is lent itself well to distant learning. And so I think students have struggled to, now when they're back and they're supposed to be having quiet, focused work time, they're so excited to see their peers, they really want to engage with them at all moments. So I think that has been challenging on the student side. On the teacher side, to be honest, I think it has also been challenging for both teachers that taught virtually and our new teachers that may be totally new to the teaching profession. I think they became very accustomed to some of the tools that they used online, like Pear Deck or Kahoot or various online tools that they would use, which I think can lend themselves well to in person. But a lot of the activities you design virtually don't make as much sense in person. And so I think they're having to think about, how do I adapt this so that it is more engaging in an in-person setting? And there's some great things happening, and I'll be honest, we have a lot of room to grow in terms of like how we're continuing to adapt those to ensure we're engaging as many students as possible.
And it's been the transition, I mean, it's not been easy on anybody, so I sympathize. And then I know, just knowing from your previous structure, like counseling was something that was done by the teachers a little bit. And so I'm wondering, have you guys thought about shifting that model a little bit post-COVID with everything that's happened?
Yeah, so we, historically, our mentor is kind of like our first line of defense. That might not be the best example, but like the first person that a student would go to if they were in need. And we contracted with Star Vista, and they would be on campus 1 day a week to provide services. This year, with the additional COVID funds, we've upped it to 3 days a week, which I think has been really helpful with students coming back. We've seen an increase in anxiety and some of the other kind of mental health challenges that are on campus. And so teachers as well, I think, have been appreciative of that. It is hard as an educator if you don't feel like you're trained as a therapist to be doing all those things. And so I think that has been a solid move. My challenge, I think, as a leader, the COVID funds are here, for this year and the next few years. I also think the counseling is something that we should have moving forward. And so just figuring out, how do we negotiate our school budget so that it is more than just once a week that we have like a clinician on site.
And then, again, just to thank you for, and just to send my thank you and gratitude to your entire staff. I know it's been very hard for all of us, so I appreciate the work that you guys all are doing and being a part of the district, so thank you.
Thank you.
Great questions. I have the same. Did you have?
Just one question.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It was concerning to hear you say that 6 out of 20 teachers had left, and I don't think you've ever reported that before. Is this the first time you've had that many leave year over year?
It usually is about 4 to 5, so it wasn't that many more. Our model, the way it's set up, is wonderful because it encourages teachers to stay for 4 years with their mentor group, but it also leads to kind of a natural endpoint when your mentor group graduates. You're like, do I want to sign up for 4 more years, or do I want to go find something new? And so this year, it just so happened that some of them transitioned to different things. One of those 6 is now like the Dean of Instruction and Culture at Shasta. Another one moved on to another position at Summit as well. But I think for me, it's been top of mind just because of the teacher shortage and the struggle we've had with refilling those positions. I have not struggled in the now 15 years I've been in education to hire like I have this year. And like to the point, I've had the position posted and haven't had like an interview in 3 months. So I think that was probably why I posted it. If it's helpful, I'm happy to include it in future years too. But it has been just a huge time suck on me in the subbing and everything, which is why I thought to include it in the presentation this year.
Yeah, I mean, just because, we're sensitive to it, obviously, with the attrition that we see.
Yeah.
So to hear that, I just want to be concerned given your size.
Yes, totally. I know.
I really fast. But thank you for your presentation. I do know some Shasta students very close to my family, and being at home, they knew that their transition to remote learning was easier for them, but they still longed to be at school. And so now that's a transition as well. And one of your volleyball players I've known since before she was a baby, Kristen Huddleston.
Oh my gosh, she had a lot of kills in the match just now.
That's
So
Kristen. And she can't even think about college right now. She doesn't want to think that far ahead, so driving her mom crazy. But I just want to thank you again for coming and great suggestions about having some of your students come in the spring.
great, and I can reach out to
Yes,
Tony to set that up.
absolutely, and have a great school year.
Yeah, thank you all. It's wonderful to see you all again. Thanks for having me.
Have a good rest of the night.
Our human resources, Ms. Lujan?
Good evening, President Tejada and members of the board. Before you this evening, we have 2 job description updates. The first one is a bus driver update. A little bit of background on this job description is the van driver and bus driver currently exist as one job description. So the intent is to actually break out the the descriptions into 2 different job descriptions because there's different licensure requirements, so it's very confusing for applicants by having it as one. So the first item before you this evening is an update to the bus driver job description that more accurately captures the responsibilities of a bus driver and the certifications necessary for the position.
Have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Job description for the van driver.
Then the other job description this evening is the van driver, which has different licensure requirements. So this job description update better captures those licensure requirements.
Second. Aye.
Thank you.
Now for consideration of future agenda items, does anyone have anything they'd like to add to a future item?
Actually, I do have one. That we adopt a resolution, land acknowledgement. And I will provide some information on that forthcoming.
Okay, you can send it to Ms. Preston and copy me. Okay, so that's the only. Get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Meeting adjourned at 8:44.